Well, a lot has happened with the green truck, so I feel like it was time for an update. So, 10 days ago, we were here. So it's been a hot minute since I posted a video, and part of that is due to the fact that progress has been slow. Part of that is due to the fact that I've been working on the red truck here and there. Part of the fact is I've just been busy and life happens. So basically, we were at a point yesterday, Kyle and I, where if the clutch bled successfully, then all we had to do was bleed the brakes, put the wheels and tires on, and then see if it moved. And we got to that point and then hit a wall. So the long and short of it is I'm preparing to take the transmission out. Basically what happened is we got 2 successful pumps out of the clutch pedal, and on the 3rd pump, she wasn't having it. So I think the throwout bearing / hydraulic slave, whatever you want to call it on this thing, is stuck in the out position as if the clutch pedal was being held pushed down. So that is to say that with the transfer case and 4-wheel drive, with the truck running, you can pop the thing into gear, nothing happens. So last night I pulled the rear drive shaft, disconnected the front drive shaft, pulled the transfer case, and I went and snagged a transmission jack, and I'm just going to do some cleaning here to get set up for that. So there hasn't been a whole lot of stuff to update you guys on lately, which is mostly why there hasn't been any updates done. So that's the situation. We'll see what the next clip holds. Honestly, I got no idea. And then the day after that, thanks to some help from my good friend John Lindblom, we were able to get the trans back in, bleed the clutch, bleed the brakes, and we were here. Once I determined that the truck was drivable and roadworthy, then we were here. That was then followed by 5 or 6 days and probably 200 to 300 miles of really trouble-free driving. Truck rips super fast, as it should be. And then, after that, we got to here. And now we're here. And it's a crank, no start. No idea what the problem is. Not sure if it's mechanical or electrical. Not sure if I need to reconnect a wire or if I need a motor. So Devin's coming over and we're gonna put it back in there and start digging into it. Well, it's a couple weeks later and I'm still trying to chip away at diagnosing this thing. And basically what we've done is isolated the engine harness from the cab. So we're back to basically the same setup as when there was batteries out here and we're just running it purely standalone. Still getting a crank no fire, and the new thing that I've discovered is that the ECM is not reading oil pressure, at least according to the CTS2. And I replaced the oil pressure sensor, still nothing. So the next thing is I'm just gonna throw this mechanical gauge on it, and I reached out to Mark at Danville to ask if no oil pressure would shut the injectors down based on how the tune was written. He said it would not, so theoretically it would run with no oil pressure. That being said, no oil pressure is its own problem, so I got to figure out either we have pressure and there's something in the harness where something's chafed or pinched or whatever that knocked out the sensor. If that's the case, it's a 5-volt reference, which means that there could be other sensors affected, which could lead back to the injectors not being commanded to fire. Or we don't have oil pressure and we've got a whole nother set of problems to deal with after that. So I'm gonna get the mechanical gauge installed and see what we get. That's how much oil pressure we have. Fantastic. So time to drop the lower pan, see what we see. So I was under the truck last night, getting ready to try to pull the balancer, and well, you can see the bolts for the balancer on the ground, but you can see that the balancer itself is not. And it's one of those things where the more I got going, the more I was like, fuck this. I'm gonna pull the nose off of it, and it's shitty, but it's one of those kind of things where you spend 2 hours to save yourself 10 hours of swearing at the thing. So this is probably gonna be it for this video, and I'm gonna make the disassembly its own separate video just to keep things somewhat reasonable in terms of length. So we kind of had the full series of emotions on this thing in the last month or so, between getting it on the road, driving it for the first time, and then obviously experiencing issues. I think probably what I'm gonna find when I pull the front cover is the dowel pin that holds the gear to the crank is probably sheared, or at the very least severely loose. That would explain the oil pressure situation. It would explain the crank no start, because even though the scan tool shows it's receiving a signal from the crank position sensor, it doesn't mean that the signal it's receiving is in sync with the camshaft position sensor, and it also doesn't mean that the signal it's receiving is sufficient to make it fire up. So now comes the fun job of taking it apart. Luckily, I happen to know the guy that put it together, and hopefully I'm not motherfucking him too much, although I almost certainly will be. So that's where I'm gonna leave you guys. Sorry for the long interval between videos, but shit happens. I'm not entirely sure when the next episode is gonna air, but this thing will almost certainly be looking quite different when that happens. So I'll catch you in the next one.